Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Julia. I was an admission officer at Haverford College, an outside reader for Emory University, and I currently work as a school-based counselor at a school in Massachusetts.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters, Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Happy Mother's Day, friends. Mother's Day is just one of those days of the year that really inspires me. I've never really done this on the podcast before, but I want to say a few things about my own mother. She is a stupendous and amazing 86-year-old woman in great health with more energy than most 45-year-olds. And she's just impacted me in so many ways. You know, my mom was a second grade teacher and my dad was a chemistry teacher. So most of my life, he was a chemistry teacher, but then he was an assistant principal for like 10 years. But I grew up seeing handwritten letters that would come to our house from students that my parents had taught. And I remember more letters from my mom than I do from my dad. I can remember on one occasion a handwritten letter that came in from somebody who was 18 who talked about how much my mom impacted her back in the second grade. I remember another letter to the editor that was in our local newspaper from someone in their 20s who wrote about the impact Norma Stucker had on him. And it made our local newspaper. And it was on the topic of how a teacher can impact a student's life. So I owe a lot of my passion for and my belief in the power of education to my parents, but mostly to my mom. And one of the things I'm really excited about, and for as long as I'm on this planet, it's something that I'm going to be dedicated to. It's something I started last year. It's a lifelong project for me. I went to the head of school and the director of advancement at Landmark Christian School, the school where my kids graduated from high school. And I said, I want to establish an Alfred and Norma fund. And the head of school, like literally almost for joy, he said, I don't know of any other school that has something like this. So what it is it's a catastrophic aid fund for teachers. So if a teacher is struggling, let's say their car breaks down, transmission goes out, or they have to get a new car, or they get an unexpected large health bill, it's an emergency fund. And like the head of school said, like we have somebody that, you know, is having this like dialysis treatment and they can't afford it. So that's for the rest of my life. That's something I'm kind of dedicating myself to, is sending money. And I'm telling you something, I haven't even told them. I told them a certain dollar figure I would commit to, but what they don't know is it's a lifetime project for me. And if there's ever one thing that could get me to give up the work I'm doing here or the work I'm doing at college missions, it would be dedicating myself to philanthropy and to funding this fund and a couple others. So, but I think that's, you know, in the way distant future. But I partly share that with you because if you're a teacher, I want you to know your work is not in vain. If you're an administrator, your work is not in vain. You know, there may be a kid graduating from college right now that's making more money than you're making. And that's tough. You're like, I'm 47. How can this 22-year-old be making more money than I'm making? But just know you're changing lives and your labor is not in vain. Shout out to all the mothers out there. You're 81% of our listeners based on our 21-22 survey that we did. You know, Friday was a very special day for me because Joy called me about a week ago and she said, Kenny G is performing at the Durham Performing Arts Center, also known as DPAC. It's this great theater in Durham that Joy can walk to from her new apartment. And she's like, would you consider having Anitra go with Karis and me for Mother's Day? So when we got married in 1990, Anitra picked the music to walk down the aisle to. She picked Kenny G's Songbird. So Friday night, Anitra, Karis, and Joy all had front row seats to hear Kenny G perform. So just shout out to all the mothers out there. And it's where all my family is right now, Durham, North Carolina. All right, let's talk a little bit about today's episode. So if you're new to our podcast, our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. And we do that by providing commercial-free content every Monday and every Thursday. So if you're an admissions junkie or a college content junkie, you have found your new home. We have over 700 hours of content at yourcollegemindkid.com. We encourage you to explore our back catalog. Most of the content we have up there is just as relevant today as it is when we recorded it. You know, nothing warms my heart more than when a listener writes in to say, I started listening a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever. Now I'm going back. And I'm listening to all the stuff in your back catalog. So check it out. I think you'll find there's some great content there. Now, friends, even with the 10 to 11 hours a month of original content we give you every month, including Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and we never do repeats. We do encourage you to sign up for our free newsletter because there's so much happening in higher ed, we can't keep track of it all. It's called YCBK Plus. And one of the things we do in YCBK Plus is we provide links to hot topics in the news that we just don't have time to get to. Now, the newsletter goes out every month between the 15th and 20th of the month. It's a free newsletter. And we have like 10 articles in there that we think you'd be interested in. So I'm just going to share 5 of the articles that you'll get in May's newsletter if you sign up. And you just do that once again at yourcollegemindkid.com. You'll see YCBK Plus. So one is on, it's called Risk Sharing, a Well-Intentioned Disaster for Colleges. Now, this article looks at this Republican proposal to hold colleges accountable to pay back student loans. So if the students aren't paying them, the colleges are going to be on the hook to pay for them. So, boy, colleges, and one more thing, they're under attack. There's another article called Underserved Students Face Highest Admissions Anxiety. And this looks at a new survey that shows that there's actually a lot more pressure on underserved or under-resourced students than there are on higher resource students when it comes to the anxiety they have with the college process. It's an interesting study. There's another article called Trump Order Targets Undocumented Students In-State Tuition. So this looks at how the Trump administration is going after undocumented students who lived in a state, and the state had allowed undocumented students to attend the school, and they live in the state, so it's giving them in-state tuition, but they're trying to stop that from being something that they could receive. No more in-state tuition for undocumented students, and that's an article on that. There's another article on Harvard faculty group pledges 10% of their salary to help the university fight Trump. So this article talks about how 88 faculty members so far have taken a pledge that they will cut 10% of their salary if that money can go into fighting Trump's attacks on Harvard. So that's an interesting article. As you see, this big time showdown between Trump and Harvard is just escalating. And then there's a kind of a sad article, Johnson & Wales University laying off 91 faculty and staff. So this article talks about how Johnson & Wales is $34 million shortfall in their budget. And these cuts are going to impact both the Charlotte, North Carolina location as well as the Providence, Rhode Island location. So those are just 5 of the 10 articles you can read about if you sign up for YCBK Plus. Okay, friends, let's talk about today's episode. So I'm going to share a big number with you. Then I'm going to share 2 things from my Texas trip that I think would be of interest to many of you. I have at least 4 things I want to share with you, but I'll do 2 this week and 2 next week. This is not a spotlight. I'm still committed to getting you a list of colleges up on our website by June 1st that any of our staff that have visited in the last few years and they're willing to do a spotlight, we will take from June 1st to July 15th and have you cast a vote. It'll be a Google form, the ones that you're most interested in. And then we can start doing call spotlights on the schools, ones that you're most interested in. Then I'm going to share an expanded version of how I answered a question that a New Jersey couple posed to me last Monday when they said, what can we do as parents to help with the college process? I love that question. So I'm going to share with you what I told them, and I'm just going to expand on it a little bit more. Then we will have part 2 of my interview with Dean John Pollard, and he's the dean of the Franke Honors College at the University of Arizona, and we're discussing the University of Arizona. So let's dive in. Well, friends, I had many choices for my big number today. There's a lot in this article. I could have gone with 46 million or 25%, but I'm going to go with 9 million. So what is 9 million? This is number of student loans or students that could go into default in a very short period of time. 5 million of which went into default on May 5th, and another 4 million are very close to going into default. So I want to read an excerpt to you from a May 1st article from ABC entitled Collections on Defaulted Student Loans May Affect Millions of People's Credit Scores. The Trump administration's plan to begin collecting defaulted college loan payments for millions of borrowers risks contributing to an economic slowdown at a time when the U.S. faces an elevated risk of recession, some experts told ABC. Roughly 5 million borrowers will have their loans sent for collections beginning on May 5th. Now, this article came out May 1st. We're sitting here, you're getting this if you're listening on Monday, getting this May 12th and beginning May 5th. So this has already started. Now, this was confirmed by DOE, Department of Education, and another 4 million are in late-stage delinquency, meaning they can face collections within a matter of months. Now, under the plan, the federal government will garnish the wages for some of those borrowers, pulling money out of their pockets that may otherwise be spent in turn trying to dry up some economic activity, experts say. If the economy spirals into downturn, they added, the lost spending would likely have been a smaller factor than other issues like tariffs and investor jitters, but the student loan collections could compound the damage. The bottom line is it's not going to be good for the economy given the current economic situation that is already precarious, said Scott Imberman, a professor of educational policy at Michigan State University. It's an additional weight that you're putting on until we tip into a potential recession. Now, I mentioned to you I could have had several other big numbers. Here's one. In all, some 42 million borrowers, that could have been one, 1.6 trillion in student debt. There's another one, according to DOE, Department of Education. If the borrowers currently in late-stage delinquency were to default on their own loans, it would bring the share of borrowers in default to nearly 25%. That was that 25% number I sussed out. The resumption of collections on defaulted student loans lifts a pause initiated in 2020 at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Within weeks, millions of borrowers will need to begin repayment. Another quote, the scale is quite large. Michael Jones, an economist at the University of Cincinnati, told ABC, every dollar that goes to pay loans is a dollar that won't be circulated into the economy. So the reason why this is a big deal is because the pause for student loans has been in effect for 5 years. So you've got a lot of people that are not used to making that payment. And it's probably pretty easy for them to say, you know what? I haven't been making it before. Then they hear all this stuff about cuts in the Department of Education and everything. So, but it's real serious. Not only impact your credit score, obviously people use that even to get apartments these days. So it's a story worth following. Okay, so let's get to a few conversations ahead on my Texas trip that I think you will find very interesting. We'll have 2 this week and 2 next week. The first was when I was at Trinity University. So when I go on these tours, schools arrange it differently. Like sometimes I have a one-on-one with a VIP kind of person. And sometimes that's, a student I'm talking about. More senior level student. Sometimes it's a golf cart tour, and sometimes it's a walking tour. That was like half my tours. And then other times I'm just with a group. And I kind of like to mix it up. Sometimes they give me a choice. And sometimes I answer it, I'll do the one. Sometimes I'll go with the group. With the group, you kind of get a feel for the students a little bit, but one-on-one's kind of great too, because I can pepper someone with like 30 questions. So this was like one of these join the group tours. It was a small group, maybe like 6 or 8. And I'm on the small group tour. And before we started the tour, this is pretty common. The tour guide goes around and has everybody introduce themselves. So there's one student from St. Louis. So that kind of caught my attention. So after the tour, I struck up a conversation with him. I was really curious, like what brought him from St. Louis to Trinity. So it turns out he's a swimming recruit. He's looking at a lot of D1 schools, a lot in the Boston area and other places. and Trinity, because you may or may not know this, but Trinity is D3, but they're a powerhouse in athletics and a lot of sports. They're top 10 in the country in D3, and they're all the way up there in a bunch of sports. And one of them is swimming, where they've won many national awards, men's and women's. So it led to a discussion we had about how they can't count on, they meaning the family, on a swimming spot and any money at these D1 schools, because across the country, as colleges tighten their budgets and put more money into paying professional football and basketball players, paying players their NIL money, name, image, and likeness, they're slashing and burning positions for sports, for non-revenue producing sports. Now, our regular listeners will remember a few months ago, I did a segment on how I expected financial challenges colleges were going to experience. It was going to impact students. Well, this is one I never mentioned. Non-revenue producing sports are being dropped, and roster spots are being reduced at many D1 schools. Spots that were once scholarship spots are being given to preferred walk-ons. And since that conversation with that student, I've actually had a similar conversation with a very savvy family I'm working with. The student is an athlete in a non-revenue producing sport. The dad told me every few days they hear about another school that's slashing roster spots, diverting money to football and basketball. I was meeting with a VP on this trip, and a call literally came in from a head football coach. And I knew he had to take it, and there was literally like a 15-minute delay in our meeting. This coach wanted to see if he could get this player through. You know, remember all this stuff. If you follow sports, all this stuff's going on right now with the transfer portal. So it's a very interesting very interesting trend. Some players are getting literally millions, while most of that does come from boosters. Not all of it comes from boosters. Colleges are also diverting more money to football and basketball, which are really the main two revenue-producing sports. I mean, there's a few cases where women's basketball is a moneymaker for some schools. Iowa's got the wrestling, and University of Minnesota Duluth, they bring in like $6.5 million into their hockey program. North Dakota brings some money into their hockey program. Boston University, Boston College, you know, they make money off their hockey programs. UT Austin and Louisiana State LSU make money on baseball. And the Stanford makes money on a few different sports that might surprise you, like tennis and swimming and gymnastics. But very few schools make money off these non-revenue producing sports. So I thought that might be of interest to you, to see how these schools are slashing their spots for non-revenue producing sports. Now, a second topic that came up that I thought might be of interest to you, it has to do with endowment tax and how this could have a very onerous impact on colleges. So the Trump administration passed an endowment tax last time in office. And prior to that, that was absolutely unheard of. Let's tax the colleges. We can get some money out of them. But what I learned on this trip is that colleges are just flat out expecting to get hit with this endowment tax. And they're rearranging their budgets. I mean, one of them told me we're allocating 10% for that. They're following all the legislation in Congress. And a number of schools are getting together and investing in lobbyists to work the K Street, you know, and in D.C., so you can work Capitol Hill to try to convince the congressman to not hit us up so much with this endowment tax. This is going to really, really hit colleges hard in the pocketbooks in substantial ways. I mean, not only is it a significant bill annually on their budget, but think about it. I mean, if I was a donor and I was donating to a college and I found out they're getting hit with a pretty big endowment tax, I'd probably be like, well, I don't know if I want to give as much or give, because I really am not giving my money for you to give it in a tax to the federal government. And one of the things I learned on this trip is that the first time around, it was only the Republicans that were all for this and the Democrats were not for it at all. But now they're trying to get money any way they can to balance the budget. So what I was told is Democrats, at least many Democrats, are now on board supporting this. And, you know, one thing that just concerns me in general, and this is not just about this endowment tax, although I'm not a favor of it, personally, not at all, to be honest with you, is that anytime you have a norm that's broken, and sometimes we have a failure of imagination to think what norms can be broken. Well, after a while, the unthinkable just becomes the new norm. And that seems like what's happening with endowment tax. It concerns me for many other things like, you know, authoritarianism, immigrant bashing, and other things like that. It just concerns me that things that may seem unheard of, are they going to be the new norm? Well, I'd prepared to talk to you guys about this endowment tax, and literally today, a brand new article broke from the Chronicle of Higher Ed. Talk about hot off the press. And it's about the latest Republican proposal on the endowment tax. I want to read it to you because it's very relevant and I think it would be of interest. So the article is called "Here's What Republicans Proposed College Endowment Tax Could Look Like" by Sarah Brown. It's behind a paywall. I mean, I subscribe to the Chronicle, so this is not one you can read. So I'm going to read it to you unless you subscribe. And literally May 10th is the date. All right, here we go. As Republican lawmakers hustle this month to advance a big, beautiful bill, that's in quotes, to enact President Trump's agenda, they are reportedly forging ahead with a hike in the endowment tax, a sliver of wealthy private colleges pay. On Friday, details of potential endowment tax changes emerged, which, by the way, that's why you send the lobbyists to go work Capitol Hill for you. This came out via Punchbowl News and Politico and Bloomberg. The exact rates described in the news reported varied, but the proposed new system would be tiered, and only colleges with endowments valued at $750,000 per student would pay a higher tax rate. So when you're looking at endowments, you can't just look at total endowment, because if you have crazy endowment for 30,000 students versus 1,000 students, that's not the same. So you have to look at endowment per student. So that's how they're using it, which is the right way to do it if you're going to do it. So apparently the new proposal says only schools with $750,000 per student would pay the higher tax rate, which is that's a smaller number of schools. Currently, colleges have endowments at $500,000 per student are paying the tax. Okay, and currently the tax is 1.4%. And there are 56 colleges that have endowments of over $500,000 per student. And that's how many paid the tax in 2023, and that's according to the Internal Revenue Service. So the article goes on to say this. In one version of the newly proposed structure, reported by Punchbowl News, colleges with endowments values of $2 million per student, and that's fewer than a half dozen schools. Listen to this. They would pay a 21% tax on endowments. Do you know how much money that is? Do you know how much annual money that is in the cutbacks that are going to have to happen if this goes through? So this is Princeton, Yale, MIT, Harvard, Stanford. And this is analysis done by James Murphy, who's he's the leader on this. Susan and I have discussed several of James Murphy's articles. He's the one who leads Education Reform Now. Now, if he's saying that, it's legit. The next group in the breakdown, reported by Punchbowl News, is subject to a 14% tax rate on endowments. And this is going to be any college that has between $1.25 million and $2 million per student. So this is going to bring in 10 more schools. Amherst, Swarthmore, Grinnell, Caltech are 4 of them. Now, if you listen very carefully to my interview with Jim Bach, we were talking about need, blind admissions. He said, I know we are for now. Who knows about the future? This is the kind of stuff people are talking about. You're going to have to make massive changes if this kind of endowment tax goes into effect. The article goes on to say, then there's a third group in the proposal covering endowment values between $750,000 and $1.25 million per student. And they would pay a 7% rate. And this brings in a dozen more colleges. Wellesley, Claremont, McKenna, Washington and Lee, and UPenn are 4 of the ones that get brought in. It goes on to say, in the tiered structure reported by Politico, the tax rates would be 10% for colleges with values between $750,000 and $1 million per student, and 20% for colleges with values over $1 million. Republican lawmakers see expanding the endowment tax as a way to raise revenue and cover tax cuts elsewhere. College leaders argue that increasing the tax rate would harm students by hampering institutions' ability to offer generous financial aid, which often comes from endowment earnings. According to Nakubu, nearly half of colleges' endowment spending in 2024 went to financial aid, another 18% to academic programs, 11% to paying for endowed faculty positions. The American Council on Education wrote in a letter to lawmakers last fall that the endowment tax in general undermines the teaching and research missions of the affected institutions without doing anything to lower the cost of college, enhance access, or address student indebtedness. And it goes on to talk about, it's ironic that Columbia is not one of those schools that doesn't have that high of an endowment, and they would not be subject to the tax. The proposed tax tiers reported on Friday would also leave out small colleges like Furman in South Carolina, which told the Chronicle last year that a double-digit tax rate on its $850 million endowment would severely curtail access for low and middle income students. News outlets report Friday that Republicans have not yet finalized their tax package, and specifics related to college endowment tax could change. Okay, friends, let's transition to the final thing I want to share today. So I was so heartened when a New Jersey dad with his student in the middle and his wife on the other side asked me, what can we do as parents to help our students with the college process? I love this question for many reasons. For one of my beefs with how many college admission offices function, and I have to admit, I didn't experience this so much with boarding school admissions. This is one area where I feel there's a difference between how many college admissions act compared to boarding school admissions, is that many colleges act like the only thing parents are good for is to cut a check and get out of the way. It not only makes parents feel useless, but in my opinion, it's terrible marketing. I feel more colleges need to include parents more. If for no other reason, then it's a smart marketing to realize it's the neck that moves the head. So maybe we should show some deference to the neck or to the parents. But let me not digress. But I also liked the question because implicit in this question is, it is our students' experience, it's our students' journey, but we're here to serve and support. What can we do? So I'm going to share all the things I shared in that answer, but it's more of an expanded version of what I said to that mom and dad. Started by saying, thank you so much for your question. There's a lot you can do. I said you could do all of the planning around college visits. There's a lot of logistics around hotels, airfare, renting cars, restaurants, booking tours and info sessions, researching parking, researching college's availability, so you can do all the logistics. I said you can talk about money early and honestly with your student. And I'm not going to go over everything that needs to be talked about here, but I do recommend, if you never heard episode 442, starting at the 6-minute, 30-second mark, I recommend you go back and hear that. In that episode, I covered 50 questions about money that parents and students need to get on the same page about. And if you think this only applies to people who are applying for financial aid, you'd be mistaken. There are questions there for full need, moderate need, and no need families. I said you can research colleges under consideration, not with a I'm going to take over mentality, but so that you can have informed conversations with your student about a college. And let's face it, if you discover something that you do not feel is a healthy environment, as parents, we never stop being a parent. You have the right to say, I've done my research, and I'm not comfortable with how Jewish students or how LGBTQ students or how international students or Asian students or Black and brown students or women or people from Arkansas are being treated at this school, and I can't support you going there. It is much better you do that now than after they're all excited and think that they're going, and then you come in with a heavy hand at the last second and say, I'm not down with this. It's also much better than finding out things well after they're there a couple of years and they find they're in a toxic, unhealthy environment. The next thing I said to this dad with the student in the middle and the mom on the other side is going to vary a lot from student to student. But there's a role in the college application process if your student welcomes this. For some, it's reading and proofreading essays. For some, it's doing research on scholarships that your student may be eligible for. For some, it's keeping detailed records of everything he or she has done and been involved in, so that with dates, so that your student can include activities they may have forgotten about, or honors or awards they've won they may have forgotten about. For some, it's helping your student identify their best personal statement topic. And for some, it's none of these. And then I said to these parents, you can do the research to learn how much admissions has changed. I shared with them how I recently listened to a podcast with David Brooks and Prof G from NYU. And Prof G said, when I went to UCLA, they admitted 76% of people that applied. Now they admit 8%. he shared how he applied to UC Berkeley for grad school with a 2.3 GPA after UCLA, and he was admitted. And then David Brooks went on to say, hey, I went to the University of Chicago, and back then they admitted 74% and not 4% like they do now. And he talked about how he had a very middling transcript and he was admitted. I say this because most parents don't take the time to educate themselves on these things, and they very innocently but detrimentally say things like, hey, we're going to go and take a tour and we're going to visit Harvard and MIT and we'll check out, here it goes, my trigger word, safety schools like BU, BC, and Northeastern. I said you won't only visit the most selective schools if you educate yourself, because you will know that no student can expect to get into these schools, let alone use the S word in describing them. And if you do this, it will take so much pressure off your student. And then you should have seen their daughter when I said this. If a smile could crack the screen on my laptop, it would have done so, because that smile went ear to ear. And then I said, you can love your student for exactly who they are, not who you want them to be. You know, there's a great book that came out a few years, maybe 10 years or so ago now. And the author who wrote it, he had a student born with special needs. And the name of that book is called Love That Boy. And it was all about loving the kid God gives you, not the kid maybe you envisioned that you would get. I mean, the greatest gift you can give is the gift of unconditional love and acceptance. And you can tell them this over and over and over, but if you don't believe it yourself, they'll feel it and they'll know it. So many students say to me in one-on-one in the counseling room, I just want to make my parents proud of me. And they say it in a way like, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to achieve that goal. That's the subtext. Now, some of you may be thinking, it's your kid, so of course you're going to love them unconditionally. But you know what? That's actually really hard to do. Now, I'm going to share something with you that I'm embarrassed about, but I'm going to be transparent. After Karis graduated from Davidson, she went through this phase where she wanted to be a baker. And while I supported that as a side hustle, when she took a full-time job at Whole Foods as a cake decorator, I thought to myself, I didn't pay all this money for you to go to college to get an $18 an hour job doing something you didn't have to go to college for. Furthermore, I didn't even share this on the podcast because I was embarrassed, and I'm embarrassed to say that I was embarrassed. I feel at times I've had somewhat of a sanctimonious attitude about parents being concerned about prestige or how a college plays in their own social circles. But I was just as guilty. I mean, I say oftentimes all that matters is that kids do what they love doing. But if my kids were to say, hey, I have no greater joy than pumping gas, and I just want to pump gas at a gas station, would I be okay with that? I don't think so. So we all have to work on making our kids feel like they're proud of them. We're proud of them no matter what. And there's nothing better we can do for our students than to make them feel like we're proud of them, whether they go to the local community college or to Status U, whether they have C's and B's or they're on high honor roll. But that's the goal, and we can all strive for the goal. We are all works in progress. I can assure you their mental health and self-esteem is highly correlated to whether they feel you love them unconditionally or whether you're proud of them for exactly who they are. All right, enough of that deep stuff. Let's get to part 2 of my interview with John Pollard, Dean of Franke's School of University of Arizona's Honors College.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, in part 2 and the final part of John Pollard's overview of the University of Arizona, John talks about the unique strengths of the SALT Center at the University of Arizona. John talks about the strength of the Fine Arts program at the University of Arizona. John talks about the marching band program at U of A. John talks about creative photography. John talks about school spirit around sports at U of A. John talks about Greek life. He talks about the personality of U of A. He talks about the weather. He talks about merit scholarships. He talks about some of the challenges U of A has faced recently. And John talks about the new president of U of A. Listen and enjoy. Talk about your SALT Center. I know you get a lot of referrals from myself and everyone on our team and a lot of counselors for your SALT Center. Why don't you talk to our listeners about what that is and who it serves really well and what makes it special?
Yeah, the SALT Center is really unique in the country. It's a resource on campus that helps support our students with various kinds of learning challenges or learning disabilities. And this is something that has been growing in demand for students coming in. This can be anything from students who have sort of general challenges with traditional learning modalities, as well as students who are really capable, really smart, hardworking, but really struggle with things ADHD, things that can inhibit their ability to learn in traditional ways. The SALT Center has a kind of a tiered system to it where you can kind of go into it deeper and deeper depending on the needs. And that center has really been a model across the country of how to universally design learning. In other words, like, how do we make sure that learning is supported for those who are challenged in ways that are different from the traditional ways that we assume learning is going to happen? I talk to parents all the time. I'm asked about the SALT Center. Students who want to come into the Franke Honors College, and brilliant students who also want to use the SALT Center. So it's not, there's a stigma around it that, oh, it's for students that need like special help or remediation. It's not that. It's really students who just need that extra attention and focused environment and maybe some more one-on-one tutoring to help them get through their classes and optimize their learning experience. So it's really an amazing resource here at the University of Arizona. Like I said, really a model for other institutions.
Besides ADD and ADHD, which are really common, a number of other things that are really common are dyslexia, executive functioning,
Yep.
dyscalculia, dysgraphia. Would the SALT Center address all of those things?
Absolutely, all those issues, and ones that we're not even thinking of.
Nonverbal learning can be another.
Totally, absolutely. And I think that's one thing I'm really proud of at the University of Arizona. Not only we have the SALT Center, but also to triangulate that universal design concept, we also have the Disability Resource Center here, which we call the DRC, which is also a world-class facility as well. The former director, that she's now the overseer, she's now the vice president, I think, for student affairs at the University of Arizona. Amanda Krause is really an amazing partner on campus and has really transformed how we think about supporting our students who have learning challenges or disabilities or both. So we have a really robust support system for student success on campus.
Talk to us about engineering. I think of that as another strength of your school. Talk to us about engineering.
Yeah, the College of Engineering here is a really powerful place for our students to develop. The dean over there, David Hahn's, a fantastic leader, and he's really got a great vision for that college. Engineers in engineering is another space, like I mentioned with nursing, that we're going to need more students to go into engineering. And I always tell parents all the time, engineering is such a great career for students to go into. We have great aerospace engineering, electrical, mechanical, of course. But one of the engineering fields that I'm seeing a real growth in and a lot of interest in our Franke Honor students is biomedical engineering. That's a big field of growth. And what I like about the engineering college here too is there's also a focus on students getting into entrepreneurial projects as well that are coming out of engineering. So yeah, engineering is very strong here. The college is growing. I think the college could be bigger based on the size of our institution. I think there's a commitment from our new president to help to expand our footprint of the College of Engineering, but very strong program. And I'll say one thing about that. I know many of the faculty over there, some of the best educators on campus actually are in our College of Engineering, which is exciting.
And I also want to talk to you, John, about something you mentioned earlier, which is your dance, your program for performing arts, dance. Talk to us about that. Strengths within that program, because is it also music? Is it musical theater? Is it just talk about all of that.
Yeah, there's the fine arts here is really strong, and the two things that it's all strong, but the two things that really pop for me are really, and nationally as well, is one is our School of Dance, which, like I said, they are, I mean, in terms of the rankings of these schools, I think they're second only to Juilliard, so we're talking about recruiting these top level dancers. And and I've been to the performances over in that school, and it's these students are sort of pro level caliber by far, ballet, modern. My daughters were in dance, and we have taken them over to those performances, and it's just unbelievable. So we do have, and we do draw some of the top students interested in going into dance in the country. And I would encourage any parent, if they have a kid who's really excels at dance, I'm sure they know about the School of Dance here at the University of Arizona. The other one too is marching band here. The Pride of Arizona Marching Band just won a national award, and this is close to my heart because I was a marching band kid in high school. I was also in band throughout college as well, and I just love the marching band here. They are one of the top marching bands, collegiate marching bands in the country, and they get recognized that often. And they're just well, they're called the Pride of Arizona, and it's a good reason why they are. So again, I say that because we have a lot of science students in the Franke Honors College, and there's a real resonance between students that are in science who also tend to be in marching band or in band. And so that culture is really strong here. And then, of course, our art museum, our Center for Creative Photography, which is really a world-renowned place. It's literally another 5-minute walk from here. And we also have our Poetry Center here. And that's also a unique space as well. So the arts are really robust here. And we have really high quality, top ranked programs.
And you also have the school spirit too. I mean, Arizona Wildcats can pack the gym. So for people that want the rah-rah, you've also got that in ample spades as well.
Oh, totally. We know how to tailgate. We know how to pack the stadium. Of course, McHale Center for basketball. We were disappointed to lose to Duke this year. We'll be back.
That was a good game.
That was
a really good game. Oh my goodness.
So, but
you came really close to coming back and pulling that off.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but we'll be back next year. We're really going to have a team next year. So, and we have a fantastic athletic director here too, who's come in and really took on the challenges of college athletics, I think, head on. She's doing a great work, Desiree Reed-Francois. And so, athletics and the sort of the tradition, and also our Greek life here too. By the way, our Greek life is very strong here. And that's a real tradition here at the University of Arizona as well. That is a really part of the culture.
So how would you describe the personality of U of A?
Well, I think our personality it's about, it depends how you think about that. I think the personality of the campus, it's vibrant and alive. There's a buzz when you come on campus. I think that's about the size of it as well. But there's also a West Coast relax. We're relaxed here too. It's not buttoned up like you might get on the East Coast. We're relaxed because the weather just forces that. The sun, we have sun, here so often. So it's a mix of kind of, intense pride in the institution, a relaxed kind of vibe on campus, but there's still a buzz. And I think there's a drive in our students to want to succeed, to both to excel academically, but also to have fun. I think that's the vibe. There's kind of a happy, it's happy here, I guess I would say. And I really appreciate that. And I've been to other college campuses where the vibe's darker in a way, like people walk around kind of, it's just got a heavier vibe to it. It's not like that at the University of Arizona. There's a real unity here, I think, about centered around being proud to be an Arizona Wildcat.
Well, after I'm done with this interview, John, I have a list rollout, and I'll be recommending U of A for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons, amongst many, is your generous merit scholarships, especially for 4.0 students.
Yeah.
Can you talk about out-of-state students, how you oftentimes can be competitive with their in-state schools with your generous merit?
Yeah. So the merit packages at the University of Arizona have been really good for out-of-state students. It's helped us attract a lot of these out-of-state students. we've had some recent adjustments to the merit aid packages. And so they've been throttled back a little bit. And I think that you're seeing this sort of, universities are struggling financially across the
Sure.
country in various
Yeah.
ways. But
Yeah.
even given that, they're still very good. I wish I had some exact numbers for you here off the top of my head. I don't, but I would encourage everyone to look into those. But I think that here's the thing. If you're a top achieving student, and I'll talk about this more when I talk about Franke Honors College, University of Arizona is very appealing for a number of reasons. One being that the merit aid package you can bring into the table here can be really strong, and put this place on par to be competitive with some of your really outstanding in-state schools. Of course, that depends what state you come from, but it can really make it appealing to leave the state and to go to a place. And you will get, and I say this all the time, and I hear this from alumni, and in particular for our Franke Honor students, you're going to get no lesser, in fact, sometimes a better learning experience here at the University of Arizona than you'll get at Ivy League schools. Listen, Ivy League schools have their advantages, and there's really great things about them, but you're not going to just be gapping. Your experience is going to be like this at an Ivy League here at the University of Arizona. It's going to be like this, or maybe like this. So that's why I think out-of-state students should really take a hard look at the University of Arizona, especially those students who really want to get, I'm going to speak to my
Sure.
Students up in Minnesota or in Iowa or in the East Coast. You're looking for that, not just that school and the programs and the amazing programs we have here, but you're looking for a change of scenery. Sure. And the University of Arizona brings that to you. And I think it can be also affordable for parents, those merit packages can make it affordable for parents.
Great. Well, we're going to transition and talk about honors colleges and talk about the national landscape. But before we do, is there anything that we didn't say about Arizona that you want to say?
The last thing I'll say about the University of Arizona is that, Arizona got a little bit of kind of wonky press recently because of our financial challenges. And I think if you look across the country, you're going to see, as you know more than anyone, Mark, institutions of higher ed are facing all kinds of challenges coming from different force functions, externally, internally, whatever. I will say, though, that we have a new president now, and President Suresh Garamella. We're getting some new leadership, and there's a real sense of optimism on campus now. We're about to kind of be done with our financial woes and moving forward there, and putting that in our rearview mirror. But I will say, though, the one thing I'm proud of is that even through those challenging times, I really feel that the student experience wasn't overall negatively impacted in general. So I'm really proud of the institution for that. And I think that our best years are yet to come.
Great. Thank you. Friends, this concludes John Pollard's overview of the University of Arizona, but John is back. We're going to be talking about honors colleges and the Franke Honors College over the next 3 weeks. Hope you join us next week. Now, friends, we've been getting a lot of questions from a listener sent in. So on Thursday's episode, we have 2 questions from listeners. Barry from New Jersey has a question about dual enrollment. And Susan and I will answer that. And then we have an anonymous question from a listener that Hillary and I are going to answer about how is AI being used in admissions these days. So Hillary will join me for that. And for our college spotlight, Nate Haveman, the VP of Enrollment at Hope College, continues to help us understand Hope College. Friends, I want to go back to the question that Dad asked me. How can I support my own student? If you're a regular listener of this podcast, you know there are 2 endings to interviews that I like so much that I play them multiple times every year. Well, I've asked Nemanja to close with these again. Nemanja is our sound engineer if you're new to our podcast. The words of wisdom from Chris Gruber, the VP of Enrollment at Davidson College, and Heath Einstein, the VP of Enrollment at TCU. All right, last question. Your best, well, it's really 2, but your best advice for students? I'm going to give you 3 because you're...
Oh, you keep changing the number. What's the deal here? Come on, you're a professional interviewer. What are you doing?
Being unprofessional. Best advice to students, parents, and college counselors.
Yeah. I think for students, one is going to be appreciate that you have more control of this process than you ever think. You do. There's so much of it that you can shape. Do things early, do things in a timely fashion, and you're going to do very, very well. And know that there's not just one place. I think there are a variety of places that you can go to. Treat it as though it's almost an additional course. Spend some good time on it. Because I think where you spend your next 4 years can be a powerful, powerful thing for you. So there's one. To the parents, I think students feel a lot of pressure in this process. So the greatest thing to do is tell your students right now, before they're starting the college search process, that you're proud of them. And it will have nothing to do with the label that you put on the back of the car, or the sticker, or the sweatshirt, or the hat that you ultimately end up wearing down the road. You're proud now, and it doesn't have to do with where they're getting into college. And with counselors, it's always going to be, know that we're in this together. We are partners, we are colleagues, and we are here to serve. And I know that there's a lot of places that you need to be managing and understanding, but let us know how we can help you. We're ready to do it at any step of the game.
All right. And the last question is your best advice for 3 groups of people: students, parents, college counselors.
My best advice to students is, as you consider where you will go to college, imagine yourself as a rubber band. And you want to go somewhere that is going to stretch you, perhaps to places that you didn't expect to be stretched, but not to the point where you break.
Ooh.
My advice to parents is that you have only one job in this process, and that is to love your child.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, if your feelings toward your child have anything to do with the bumper sticker that's going on in the car, then you may cause irreparable harm to that relationship. So just remember to love your children and to tell them that you love them. And to counselors, my advice is have enough wine for the whole year, because you're probably gonna need it.
See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stylionos Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.